So Vijay, thank you so much for joining us today on Conversations with Leaders.
Thank you for having me.
So as a fintech organization, security is obviously very important for the success of your business.
Sure.
And then finding and retaining security talent to run and implement security tools within your organization, I imagine, can be challenging as well.
Yep, absolutely.
How do you go about doing that? Finding the right security people, training them accordingly, and then of course retaining them within your organization.
We're a multinational organization, so that helps us out a lot. The job market's so hot right now, and finding the right talent, not only in security, but other areas like DevOps and engineering is a hard thing to do. And so if you have the ability to hire in different geographic regions,
right.
Allow remote and teleconferencing where appropriate,
right.
And be engaged with your remote staff just as much as if they were local, provide the training and the development that you would expect anyone to want as part of a remote or global workforce as well. It also depends on the focus of the organization. So if you're a product security focused organization, that's what you're going to want to hire when it comes to product security engineers, application security engineers. If you're a detection and response first organization, you're going to want to find someone with that type of background, whether it's digital forensics, incident response,
right.
and that come from a SOC background. The fact of the matter is everybody needs a little bit of everything when it comes to security and compliance. Privacy is becoming an important component of security programs and the overall risk exposure an organization may have. And so having appropriate chops in both compliance, privacy,
right.
and some of the other regulatory components that come within your vertical are also going to be important. So if you're in the financial services or financial technology organization like Blackhawk, compliance is a massive requirement for you to have some understanding.
Certainly. So with the security skill sets and the types of people you're hiring, are you finding that you are able to hire well-rounded security professionals, yet you still need to teach them cloud and cloud security? Or do you find that the professionals that you're hiring today have those skills already?
I would say that within the past couple of years, there has been more candidates that come with a background in the public cloud and have worked in a cloud service provider's respective environment in some capacity. I do think, though, it's still hard to find someone with 5 or more years of experience that
Sure.
have solid cloud service provider experience and maybe well-versed in both traditional security approaches and understand AWS really well,
Sure.
or another provider potentially.
And you're in a relatively hot market in the San Francisco Bay Area.
Yeah,
Right.
that's correct. It doesn't make it
Right.
easier. So we try to be creative about our hiring approaches. We have offices all around the globe, fortunately for me, and so I do have security staff in other offices around the globe, which helps tremendously to build my global footprint from a staffing standpoint.
So Vijay, what do you think are some of the most pressing challenges for security organizations today?
I think for most security organizations, or most organizations, I should say, one of the pressing challenges is hiring and retaining talent, right? The job market's so hot right now where regardless of the endless challenges you may have in your respective environment or the upward mobility opportunities that you may have, the training opportunities you may have, there's an abundance of opportunities out there. So I would say that's probably one of the biggest pressing issues that we as leaders have right now.
Sure.
Is finding and retaining the appropriate staff to make sure that you're executing on what you need to be executing on.
Any tips and tricks you'd like to share about retaining security professionals?
I'm fortunate in that I do have offices all around the world, and so that helps out tremendously again. But be accommodating to remote staff, of course.
Right.
Maybe an MSP in some specific areas.
Okay.
And potentially professional services or contractors in other areas as well as an option.
As you know, as companies move to the cloud, they look at infrastructure as code, security as code, and there's lots of opportunities to automate, quite frankly, some of the more mundane tasks in running an enterprise. How has your organization and Blackhawk Network leveraged automation towards that end goal?
Yeah, absolutely. So automation is something that we have been exploring for the past couple of years pretty extensively. And so we've gotten to a point where some of the basic tasks and the more rote tasks that you would traditionally perform as a SOC analyst, for example, whether it's enriching data or pulling additional data about an alert or a signal of interest from corresponding event data. Those are all things that can be automated, should be automated, and in some instances we have automated. We've also started to explore the vast various different ways that AWS allows us to automate certain tasks. In AWS, for example, we use AWS config rules to auto-remediate certain types of actions, such as a policy on S3 bucket or a couple other things. Another instance of automation in AWS that we do is auto-containing using security groups when we know that there is a workload of interest that we need to contain. And so we have some tricks that allow us to do that relatively cleanly.
Great.
Some other examples would be disabling specific keys or roles that may exhibit some interesting behaviors. And so those are additional things that we do.
So as you automate more and more of these more basic functions, are you finding that your security engineers or security operations folks are now able to focus on other issues maybe that are more impactful to the business?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say that from a detection and response standpoint, some of the more rote operations, wherever possible, we've gotten to a point where we can automate, which allows engineers and analysts to focus on some of the larger initiatives or task-based things that they may be working on at that time.
So Vijay, how do you see security as being an enabler within your organization?
It's my primary responsibility to make sure that we could ship product as fast as possible with the appropriate risks taken into consideration. And so one of the ways that we've done that at Blackhawk Network is by shifting left the responsibility and the inclusion of security in product discussions and technology discussions from an engineering standpoint as well, and to be part of those preliminary discussions as early as possible, and so that security is not a checkbox that you get at the end of a sprint that requires something to go live. And so a lot of organizations are moving to this model. Of course, you need to be able to scale with it when it comes to product engineering organizations and what the appropriate ratio between a security engineer and your product and security or your product and technology organizations have. And so being part of the discussion early is absolutely critical, I would say, to make sure that you enable your organization in the right ways.
Sure. So you're no longer the department of no, right? You're the department of yes, but here I want to make sure that you understand the risk about what we're about to do, right?
Yeah, it's being the department of yes, and here are the risks. And oh yeah, by the way, we've been already talking about this for the last few weeks already. And so we have a pretty good understanding of what the risks are. And these are a set of mitigating controls, or these are the set of things that we know what we need to do in the case, in the event of something.
So Vijay, for our viewers and who are looking at their security programs as they develop and move to the cloud, what are some of the more interesting challenges that you see for security organizations today, especially as they're looking at moving to the cloud, or even if they're in the cloud already?
For most CISOs, I think one of the things that come to top of mind is third-party risk. When it comes to whether you're already in the cloud or moving into the cloud, or you're still in the data center and are thinking about moving to the cloud. But the adoption of service providers and software as a service vendors and engaging a different operating model when it comes to operating as a business and allowing your data to go outside of your barriers and your walls, and better understanding what that exposure and risk is a top of mind concern for most execs in security and in IT, I would say. Third party risk is absolutely critical in that there is vast amounts of time spent by vendors assessing whether or not they want to partner with another vendor, exchange data with another vendor, allow another vendor to have access to their environment, allow another vendor to see some maybe potentially mass data in their respective environment, or have another service provider have access to an interface or portal in their environment. And so the fact of the matter is, this is the direction that we're going to as a global organization.
Right.
And most organizations are going through from a transformation standpoint. And so assessing the risk associated with those third parties is absolutely critical. You're starting to see a lot more supply chain attacks, a lot more third party risks being introduced into ecosystems and organizations, but it's a cost of doing business. And so I think the top of mind question for most of us is, how do we do that securely?
Vijay, thank you so much for your insights and joining us on Conversations with Leaders today.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me.
Certainly.